My cousin got me fired from my dream job by sending twisted blog screenshots to my boss, and my aunt called HR pretending to be a concerned citizen. They laughed on Facebook until I got hired by their rival and said, "Tell them I said hi." I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of the place I thought would be my dream job, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers went numb. My phone buzzed nonstop in my lap. Everyone suddenly wanted to check in after hearing the news. Apparently, word travels fast when you get fired for being a potential safety concern. That phrase kept echoing in my head. A potential safety concern. I didn't even understand what had happened until my friend Jenna texted me a screenshot. At first, I didn't recognize the Facebook post because I had been blocked from seeing it. The caption said, "Some people really shouldn't be working around normal folks." Underneath it, my cousin Taylor and my Aunt Linda were laughing in the comments like they had just pulled a prank. And then I saw the images. 3 screenshots from an old therapy blog I kept years ago, back when I was working through panic attacks and intrusive thoughts. Stuff I wrote anonymously because it felt safer to put words somewhere rather than let them sit inside me. Stuff about fear, about trauma, about feeling trapped in my own head. Private things, vulnerable things, not dangerous, not violent. But Taylor had cropped them and twisted the context to make it look like I was unstable and unpredictable. Sent directly to my new boss. And apparently that wasn't enough for my aunt, because she went even further. She called HR pretending to be a concerned local parent, warning them that I was not mentally safe around the public. I didn't know any of this when I came into work that morning, still hopeful, still trying to prove myself. I'd wanted this job for years. I had worked my ass off to get here. And then my manager asked me to step into a small conference room, shut the door, and told me they were letting me go immediately. No explanation, no questions, nothing. It wasn't until I was already back in my car, stunned and shaking, that Jenna's screenshots came through. She'd seen the Facebook post because someone in my aunt's friend circle had quietly sent it to her, saying they felt sick about what my family was doing. That's when I realized they wanted this. They had planned it, my own family. And the part that gutted me most was how gleeful they looked in those comments, laughing about how fast it worked, and how they knew that company wouldn't want someone like her around. Someone like me. I stared at the building that had just fired me and felt this hard, cold pressure build in my chest. Not sadness, not anymore, but something sharper. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. My phone buzzed again. Another text. This one from an unknown number. "Hi, we received your application. We'd like to schedule an interview for next week. Are you available?" It was from their biggest competitor. A place my cousin had bragged for years that she wanted to work, but couldn't even get an interview with. I didn't respond yet. I just stared at the message and let a very slow, very steady thought settle in. If they wanted to destroy my reputation, if they wanted to laugh at my pain, then they'd picked the wrong person to mess with, because they had forgotten something important. I know every secret they've tried to hide, and I know exactly who will listen when I start talking. I took a deep breath, opened the message, and typed something that was going to change everything, but not in the way my family expected. Before everything blew up, my relationship with my family was already brittle. Not shattered, not broken, just this thin, glassy surface we all pretended was solid. Anyone else looking at us from the outside would have said we were close. Holidays together, group photos, birthday dinners at the same Applebee's every year. But underneath all of that was a long history of quiet resentment, competition, and the kind of subtle cruelty people pretend is just how family jokes around. My cousin Taylor and I grew up 10 minutes apart. Same schools, same friend circles, same everything. Except she always had this need to one-up me. If I got an A, she needed an A+. If I joined a club, she suddenly had been thinking about joining it for years. If I mentioned a crush, she'd immediately flirt with him, loudly, publicly, almost like she wanted me to watch. My Aunt Linda wasn't any better. She was the type who loved pointing out flaws and calling it tough love. If I gained weight, she'd comment on it. If I cut my hair, she'd tell me it made my face look rounder. If I got excited about something, she'd find a way to make it sound childish. So when I started talking about my dream job, how badly I wanted to work at the nonprofit, how it aligned with what I cared about, how I'd been applying for a year, Linda would just smile that tight smile and say, "Well, don't get your hopes up. You tend to crumble under pressure." And Taylor would follow up with, "Yeah, maybe look for something a little more stable," which was rich coming from someone who'd hopped between 5 jobs in 2 years. But the real divide between us came years earlier, right after my breakdown. Back when I was drowning in anxiety, therapy became the only thing keeping me functioning. I wrote on an anonymous blog because it helped me untangle my thoughts. I never shared it with anyone. I never linked it to my real name. It was the one place in my life where I could be honest without people judging me. Except someone did. Someone found it. I still don't know how. Maybe they recognized the writing style. Maybe they were looking for dirt. Maybe they just got lucky. But one day, Taylor made a snide comment at a cookout, something about people who write their feelings on the internet like anyone cares. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. It was subtle, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. I should have confronted her. I should have deleted everything. I didn't, because I wanted to believe she wouldn't be that cruel. I wanted to believe family wouldn't weaponize something so personal. Stupid. When I finally landed the job at the nonprofit, the first person to text me wasn't my mom, wasn't a friend, it was Taylor. "Congrats. Hopefully you can handle it this time." That should have been a warning. Instead, I brushed it off. I told myself she was insecure. I told myself Linda had probably put her up to it. I told myself it didn't matter. But then the job actually started, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like things were finally going right. I liked my coworkers. My supervisor trusted me with real responsibilities. I felt stable, hopeful, like I was finally getting distance from all the old crap. And maybe that's exactly why my family couldn't stand it. Maybe seeing me happy irritated something in them. Or maybe the truth was worse. Maybe they were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I didn't know how deep their jealousy ran until the day I got fired. And I didn't know how far I could fall until they pushed me. But I also didn't know how far I could climb. The days after I got fired felt like I was walking around without skin. Everything hurt. Even normal sounds, cars outside, dishes clinking in the sink, the hum of my old apartment's AC, felt sharp, like they were poking at the raw places I didn't know were still open. I kept replaying every moment from my first week at the job, every smile I gave, every task I completed, every time I told myself, "You're finally doing it. You're finally good enough." And then the memory always snapped back to that tiny conference room, to my manager sliding the severance packet across the table without looking me in the eyes. I didn't tell my mom right away. I didn't know how to explain that I'd been fired for things I wrote during the worst period of my life, things I never thought anyone in my family would even know about. When I finally did tell her, she just went quiet. Not shocked. Not outraged. Just tired. I knew that look. It was the look she used when she wanted to avoid conflict. "She probably didn't mean for it to go that far," my mom said softly, referring to Taylor, as if sending my boss doctored screenshots of my mental health struggles was the kind of thing people do by accident. I felt something in me harden. "She knew exactly what she was doing," I said, and my voice sounded flat, almost detached. But the real escalation came a few days later when I got a text from my uncle, Linda's husband, who never messages me unless someone died or he needs tech help. "Ignore whatever nonsense you're spreading. Taylor didn't get you fired. Stop looking for attention." I stared at the text so long my eyes blurred. I hadn't told anyone in the family what happened, which meant someone was already trying to rewrite the story before I even had the chance to speak. And then, like clockwork, my Aunt Linda posted a vague Facebook status. "Some people love to play the victim when the truth is they're unstable and can't keep a job. Family can't fix everything." Dozens of her friends liked it. A few commented with the usual, "You're so patient and some people need to grow up." Every comment felt like another shove down a staircase I didn't realize I'd been pushed onto. I didn't respond. I didn't message anyone. Instead, I opened my laptop and reread the application I had submitted to the competitor company right after getting fired. At the time, it had felt like a long shot, like throwing a paper airplane into a hurricane and hoping it landed somewhere safe. But now they wanted an interview, and the more I thought about it, the more a new idea started forming. Not revenge, not yet, something quieter, something that required patience, because here's what my family didn't know. Taylor had been bragging about wanting a job at that competitor company for years. She'd applied multiple times. She'd even gone to one of their hiring fairs and posted selfies with the banner like she already worked there. And here they were, contacting me. The irony would have been hilarious if it hadn't felt so bitter in my mouth. But the real escalation happened the night before the interview. I got another message, this time from someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. "Hey, I know this might be weird, but I saw a post about you from Linda and Taylor. You should know what they've been saying behind your back. I think it's worse than you realize." Attached were screenshots, new ones, and these weren't from my old blog. These were group chat messages, full of things my own family had said about me for months. Things that made my stomach twist. Things that made my hands shake. Things that made me realize this wasn't petty jealousy anymore. This was a long-term plan, and I wasn't even close to understanding why. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, the glow from my phone lighting up my hands as I scrolled through the screenshots over and over. At first I thought they had to be fake, like maybe someone doctored them the same way Taylor had doctored my therapy posts. But the usernames were real, the profile pictures were real. The tone, yeah, that was very real. It was a family group chat, one I wasn't in, one that had been active for months. And the messages weren't just petty gossip. They weren't jokes or passive-aggressive digs. They were detailed, strategic conversations centered around me. The first one that punched me right in the chest was from Linda. "She's applying again. Someone needs to say something before they hire her. We can't let her make the family look bad again." Make the family look bad? For getting a job? Then another message, this one from Taylor. "If they Google her name, nothing comes up. We should change that." That alone made my stomach drop. But it got worse. Then came, "I still have those old blog posts she wrote when she was depressed. If we send the right pieces, we can make it look like she's unstable." Bosses don't want to deal with that. My hands went cold. My ears rang. Then Linda again, perfect. "Just crop out the part where she says, 'I'm trying to get better.'" It needs to sound like she's spiraling. I felt nauseous. But the real gut kick was a message from my uncle, the one who sent me that text accusing me of playing victim. "Once she loses the job, she'll crawl back home, and we can finally convince your brother to stop helping her with bills. She needs to learn the hard way." Life isn't therapy. That one hit harder than all the others, because it clicked something into place I hadn't even considered. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't pettiness. They weren't trying to embarrass me. They were trying to break me down systematically, piece by piece, until I came crawling back into the role they wanted me in: quiet, dependent, manageable. There was more. So much more. A message from Taylor. She's been bragging about that nonprofit job for months. It'll be hilarious when she gets fired the first week. And then a message that made my throat close up. A name I didn't expect to see. My own mother. Not a lot. Not directly cruel. But she had typed, "I wish she'd stop talking about that job. She's putting too much pressure on herself. Maybe it's better if she doesn't get it." Seeing her name in that chat was worse than all the rest. It was tiny. It was subtle, but it was still there. My mom, the one person I thought was neutral, had been part of the planning. Not aggressively, not like Linda or Taylor, but enough. Enough to sit there quietly while they tore me apart. Enough to let them use my mental health as a battering ram. My breath kept catching in my chest. I put the phone down and pressed my palms to my eyes, like maybe I could erase the images burned into my brain. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But instead, a cold, clear calm started spreading through me, slowly, steadily, like a tide rising inside my ribs. Because now I finally understood something I'd been missing for years. This wasn't a family feud. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated betrayal. A long-term campaign to keep me small, dependent, and ashamed. And the worst part was, they thought I'd never find out. They trusted each other too much. And they underestimated me too deeply. I stood up from the bed, my whole body buzzing with a new kind of energy. Not panic, not grief, purpose. Because the interview was tomorrow. And now, I had every reason to walk into that room with a fire they didn't even know they had lit. They wanted to break me. They had no idea what they had just built instead. The morning of the interview, I woke up before my alarm with that same cold clarity humming under my skin. It wasn't anger, not anymore. Anger is hot, messy, unpredictable. This was different. This was sharp. Focused. Controlled. I showered, dressed, and rehearsed my talking points like nothing was wrong, but the whole time my mind was running a parallel track, piecing together a plan that had been building ever since I saw that group chat. Not revenge, not yet. First, I needed stability, power, leverage, something real and solid under my feet so that when I finally pushed back, I wouldn't slip. The competitor company, the one Taylor worshipped from afar, was my first step. The office was in downtown Raleigh, glassy and modern, the kind of place that looked like success the second you walked through the doors. The receptionist smiled at me, professional and warm, and for a split second I felt my throat tighten, not from nerves, but from how wildly different this environment already felt compared to the one that had fired me without even letting me explain. When the hiring manager came out to meet me, she shook my hand firmly and said, "We've heard great things about your work." I didn't tell her that the last company hadn't given me long enough to show any of it. I didn't need to. I knew what I was capable of, and I knew exactly what had been taken from me. The interview went well, better than well. They asked real questions, listened when I talked, let me finish my sentences. No rushing, no judgment. No weird glances toward a file that had already decided my fate the way my previous employer had done. For the first time since everything happened, I felt something like confidence crack through the numbness. But that wasn't the real turning point. The real moment came at the end of the interview when the hiring manager leaned back and said, "This might be forward, but we had an anonymous call about you after we emailed you the interview time." My stomach dropped. "What kind of call?" She studied me for a moment, like she was trying to read my reaction. Then she said, "Someone claiming to be a community member said you were a safety concern." But the story didn't add up. It sounded personal, not professional. There it was, the escalation I had been waiting for. They weren't just satisfied with destroying one job, they were trying to poison every opportunity before I even walked in the door. But this time they had miscalculated. Because this company wasn't interested in gossip, I didn't get defensive, I didn't stumble, I didn't explain the whole messy truth. I just said calmly, "I have people in my life who don't want me to succeed. I won't speak poorly about family, but I will say this. What they're doing isn't about my qualifications. And I'm willing to prove myself with my work, not rumors." The hiring manager's expression softened. That was the right answer. When I left the building, I sat in my car with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, the same way I had when I'd been fired. But this time, it felt different. This time, I wasn't shaking. I already had the job in my gut. I could feel it. But more importantly, I finally had something else. A map of exactly how to take my family down without ever throwing a punch. Because now I knew three critical things. They were still trying to sabotage me. They didn't know I had the group chat screenshots. And most importantly, their downfall wouldn't come from me exposing them directly. It would come from letting their own words destroy them. I just needed the right timing, the right audience, and the right person to listen. And I already knew exactly who that was. 2 days after the interview, I got the call I'd been waiting for. "We'd love to offer you the position," the hiring manager said. "Your references speak highly of you, especially the one you added last minute. He was very convincing." Last minute. I hadn't added anyone last minute, but I played it cool, thanked her, and accepted the offer. When I hung up, I just sat there on my couch staring at my phone. The relief was real, but the confusion hit just as hard. I hadn't listed any new reference. I hadn't updated anything since applying. So who the hell had spoken on my behalf? At first I thought maybe it was Jenna, or maybe one of my old managers from years ago. But something told me it wasn't that simple. Not with how everything else had gone. Not with how nothing, absolutely nothing in the past few weeks had been what it seemed. An hour later, my answer came in the most unexpected form imaginable. A number I didn't recognize texted me, "You're welcome. Call me if you're ready to talk about your family." Attached was a name, my father. The one who left when I was 13. The one I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. The one my mother refused to mention except to say he chose a different life. I stared at the name until my eyes burned. Why would he call my future employer? Why would he vouch for me? Why would he even know I was applying? My gut twisted. Someone had told him. I checked the area code, South Carolina. He lived there now. Alone, according to the few crumbs of info I'd gathered over the years. I didn't call him. Not yet. I needed time to breathe, to think, to understand what was happening. But the very next morning, I didn't get time. Because I woke up to 27 texts, 3 missed calls from my Aunt Linda, 5 from my mother, and 1 from Taylor. Every message was some variation of, "Call us now, we need to talk. What did you do?" My heart spiked for a second, panic, instinctive old fear, but then it settled. Because I knew something had happened, something big. Something they didn't control. I sat up, opened the messages, and finally found the one that explained everything. A forwarded email from my new employer, straight to my mother. Apparently, when Linda tried to call them, again, to warn them about hiring me, the company responded very differently than my last job. They didn't just brush her off. They didn't just ignore the call. They forwarded the details to HR. And HR contacted me directly, explaining that an individual claiming to be a concerned citizen had tried to interfere with my employment. They assured me they had flagged the number and documented it. But the part that made my breath freeze, the email said, "We have also been contacted by someone claiming to be the applicant's estranged parent, informing us of a long-term pattern of harassment by certain family members. Given the consistency of his account with what we observed, we have taken necessary precautions." My father had beaten them to it. He had told them everything, before I even knew he knew anything. I didn't understand how he had found out. I didn't understand why he would suddenly step in after a decade of silence. But then another message from him appeared. "I should have stopped them years ago. I didn't. I won't make that mistake again. Call me when you're ready." I stared at the screen, my hands cold, because this wasn't just a helpful gesture. This wasn't some heartfelt reunion. This was a signal. He knew something. Something I didn't. Something about my family. Something about why they had gone after me so hard, for so long. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid of my aunt or my cousin or even my mother's silence. I was afraid of what he was about to tell me. I didn't call my father right away. I paced around my apartment for almost an hour, my phone in my hand, my brain looping worst-case scenarios like a scratched DVD. The last real memory I had of him was him standing in our doorway with a bag in his hand, refusing to look at my mother. I was 13. He said he couldn't live like this anymore. I didn't understand what this meant. I did now. At least partly. Finally, I sat down on the floor, hit call, and held the phone to my ear. He picked up on the first ring. "Hey," he said, voice steady, older, rough around the edges. "I wasn't sure you'd call." "I wasn't sure either," I said. "Why did you contact my employer?" He exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for years. "Because I recognized the pattern, and because I knew who was behind it." A cold pulse ran through me. "So tell me." There was a pause, a heavy one. Then he said something that made my stomach flip. "You think this started with you." It didn't. He told me everything. It started before I was even born, before he married my mother, before he even knew who Linda really was. According to him, Linda had always been obsessed with controlling the family narrative, how they looked, how they were perceived, how much sympathy she could manipulate out of people. But underneath that shiny, good Christian woman image was something darker. She thrived on breaking down anyone who threatened her sense of superiority, anyone who looked like they might outgrow her. And she had done it before. Multiple times. To my father. To my father's sister. To an older cousin who moved away and never spoke to the family again. Every time someone tried to build a life she didn't approve of, better job, healthier boundaries, a partner she didn't like, Linda would quietly, patiently, systematically sabotage them. She'd tell employers lies, stir drama, call landlords, spread rumors to neighbors, anything to make the person collapse inward and return to the family needy, dependent, and compliant. "She did it to me," my father said. "Before your mother and I split, she called my boss and told him I had a drinking problem. I didn't. She told him I was stealing from the company. I wasn't. I lost the promotion. Then the job. And your mother, she let it happen. Because she didn't want to confront Linda." My breath caught. "Mom knew." "She always knew," he said quietly. "Linda made the decisions, your mother enforced them." I felt sick. Then he said the part that hit me like a punch. "They went after you the moment you started pulling away. The moment you started building a life without needing them. It wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about your job. It was about control. You broke the timeline they had planned." "The timeline? You were supposed to move home," he said. "They've been pushing that for years. You were supposed to get a job nearby that Linda approved of. You were supposed to stay small, manageable, predictable." I felt the room tilt. "And when you didn't," he continued, voice steady. They did what they always do. They destroyed the parts of your life that gave you independence. They wanted you back under their roof so they could fix you, not help you. Control you. My hands were shaking, not from fear, rage, cold rage, controlled rage. They tried to trap you, he said. Just like they trapped me, just like they tried to trap everyone who didn't obey. So why are you helping me now? I asked. After all these years, his answer came without hesitation. Because you're the first one who fought back. Silence sat heavy on the line. If you let me, he said slowly, I'll help you end what they started. I didn't speak for a long time. Because suddenly everything made sense, every dig, every undermining comment, every concerned citizen phone call, every sabotage. It wasn't random. It wasn't jealousy. It was a cage. One they'd been building around me for years. One they thought I'd never see. But now I did. And I was ready to burn the whole structure down. The thing about revenge is that it only works if the timing is perfect. And now I finally had every piece lined up. The screenshots, the new job, the truth about my family, and a father who knew every psychological trick they'd ever used. I didn't need to confront them directly. I didn't need to scream or demand apologies. No, what I needed was daylight. People like Linda and Taylor thrive in the dark, where rumors are whispered and lies travel quietly. They count on no one ever comparing notes. They count on their victims staying silent out of shame. So the first step of my revenge was simple. I stopped being silent. My new job asked me if I wanted to submit a harassment report for their file. I did. I sent them the group chat screenshots, the cropped therapy blog posts, the call logs, everything. HR's director emailed back personally. We will be adding your relatives' information to a permanent do not contact list. We are also forwarding this to our legal counsel. For the first time ever, they were the ones being documented. Next, I filed a report with the nonprofit that had fired me. Not to get my job back, I didn't want it anymore, but to show them what really happened. I included the screenshots of Linda and Taylor laughing about making me look unstable. I included the proof that the call to HR had been a malicious impersonation. I attached the email from my new employer describing their interference. 2 days later, the nonprofit's HR department called me. They apologized, formally, in writing. And then they told me they were opening an internal investigation and reviewing my termination. That report, they said, would remain attached to my personnel file forever, clearing my name. But my real revenge came from something quieter, something slower, something that cut deeper because it exposed everything my family had tried to hide. See, while they were busy tearing me down, my father had been quietly talking to someone else. My mother, one night I got a text from her asking if she could come over. She sounded small, broken, nothing like the woman who had typed that passive-aggressive line about me, putting too much pressure on myself. She sat at my kitchen table and cried harder than I'd ever seen. Not because she cared about what she'd done, at least not at first, but because her world was finally collapsing. My father had told her he was prepared to tell the entire extended family the truth about Linda's years of sabotage, including the things my mother had allowed. And he wasn't bluffing. I didn't comfort her. I didn't soften anything. I just sat across from her and said, "You helped them hurt me, and now everyone will know." For once, she didn't have a single excuse. The fallout came fast. First, my uncle texted me, a long, frantic message begging me not to share the screenshots with his church committee. I didn't respond. Then Taylor's longtime boyfriend messaged me, saying he had no idea she was like this, and asking if I could send him the proof. I did. A day later, Taylor deactivated every social media account she had. And Linda, she tried to call me 16 times in one day. When I didn't answer, she sent a voicemail full of rage, then one full of tears, then one begging me not to ruin the family. But they ruined it themselves the moment they decided to crush me instead of confronting their own emptiness. My father and I aren't magically healed. We're not pretending to be a perfect pair now, but we talk. For the first time in my adult life, we talk. And he's the one who said something that stuck with me. Surviving them wasn't weakness. It was training. Now, when I walk into my new office building in Raleigh, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time, peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because the worst parts of my past can't touch me anymore. They built a cage, they built it carefully, they built it slowly, and I walked out of it. The kicker, I didn't slam the door behind me, I left it wide open, so everyone could see exactly who locked it in the first place.